Hi, I'm Elizabeth Hurd. I am a Provisional Elder in the Michigan Conference, currently serving at Caledonia United Methodist Church in Caledonia, Michigan. And I'm very excited that Extraordinary Connection asked me to do a devotion for you all today. So our devotion is going to center on the calling of the disciples, specifically from the Gospel according to Luke, which is Luke chapter 5, verses 1 through 11. And I'm not going to read through all of the scripture. Feel free to do that if you want to, but I just kind of want to hit some of the main points from the story that Luke tells. So the first thing that we see happen is Jesus kind of commandeers the boats of the fishermen that he's about to call to be disciples, so he can take them out into the lake and teach the crowd from the boat. And then the next thing that happens is we see Jesus tell the disciples to cast their nets into the water, and then we get the classic, but we've been fishing all night and we haven't caught anything. And then of course they cast their nets out into the water and there's a miraculous catch of fish. The nets are filled, they catch more than their fill. And then of course we see Simon Peter say something along the lines of like, whoa, I am not worthy of this. Just like, leave me be, God, because I am not worthy of this. But then Jesus says, no, you are, and now I'm going to call you to go fish for people. Will you follow me? And we see the disciples drop their nets and follow Jesus. And that's pretty much the entirety of the story that I just summarized for you. What I want to talk about today is a little bit about what it's like to say yes to God and then build on what we're saying yes to. And so for a little bit of background, I started my appointment in Caledonia back in July of 2019. And when I was about 6 months into this appointment, which was January of this year, I decided I was finally settled enough that I wanted to do something fun. I just wanted to do something fun to get me out of the parsonage and branch out a little bit. And I was searching for something to do and eventually landed on an improv comedy class that was taught through the Grand Rapids Civic Theater. Now, I love comedy. I tend to think of myself as a funny person, but I really had no experience with improv comedy before. It wasn't my favorite comedic style, but I decided to try it, just to do something new and do something different. So I really had no idea what it would entail. Luckily, the teacher gave us a lecture the first day where he basically told us, 1, don't take any notes. You're not going to need them. And 2, there is only one rule in improv comedy. And this one rule is the foundation of all improv comedy. If you follow this rule, you will be successful in improv. And if you don't follow this rule, then you're not going to be good at it. Now, this rule is called yes and. And basically what this rule says is that you have to say yes to whatever is given to you in an improv scene, no matter how wacky, no matter how wild, no matter how much it deviates from what you were thinking, you have to say yes to what is given to you. You cannot reject what is being given to you. And the next step is you have to build on it. You have to take it a step further. And it's through saying yes and building upon it, and then saying yes again and building upon it, and saying yes again and building upon it, that an improv scene comes to fruition. Now, if you don't do those two things, if you don't say yes and you don't build upon it, you don't live into the and, then your scene is going to stagnate and it's going to be really, really boring. The audience is going to be bored and it's not going to be funny, and you've lost the comedy of improv. Now, of course, being a pastor, I started to think about how much yes and applies to our own faith. Really, the only way we can do anything in our faith is if we say yes to whatever God is calling us to do, and then we work to build upon that calling. So we have to say yes to God, and then we have to do the work of taking our call a step further. The calling of the disciples, no matter what gospel you read it through, is all about saying yes and to Jesus. In the gospel according to Luke, the disciples say yes to Jesus getting in their boat, first of all. And then the disciples say yes to casting the nets into the deep water. And then the disciples say yes to following Jesus. If at any point the disciples had said no, the story would be a lot different. Or if Jesus had let Simon Peter get away with that no that Simon tries in the middle of it, like Simon Peter usually does, the story would have been a lot different. And I even reckon our faith would look a lot different. So, even as we're walking in the midst of this pandemic, we can start to think about all of the places that God is calling us to and how we can say yes to them and how we can then build upon them to do the work that God is calling us to do in this world. So I invite you to think about, what is God calling you to say yes to? What can you do to build upon the things that you've already said yes to? And how can you work with God to build something up? How can you live into the great yes and of our faith? Peace and blessings to you, and thanks be to God.